We are going over to a very hot Zurich now to tell us about the Cornwall Sabbatical, observations through a returning pirate's kaleidoscope. Welcome to the show, John Cox.
Hi, Selina. Thanks very much for having me on the show.
You're welcome. So tell us about the book. I believe you had about 30 years abroad?
Yes. So basically, I'm Cornish, and the book is obviously set in Cornwall. But like a lot of people of my generation, there wasn't, at the time, no university, no further education in Cornwall. We left to go to university up country, as we would say. And then in a lot of cases, we never returned. I became a journalist, eventually starting on Fleet Street, which probably shows you my age, with a news agency. And then I spent, a good 10, 15 years with news agencies traveling around the world. Finally settling in Zurich. My wife is Swiss, where I went over to the consumer research side. And then we had COVID, and clearly that was a bit of a sort of like an eye-opener for me. I'd been back to Cornwall, bringing the family down over the years on holiday. I've always wanted to be a writer. I tried to write a book 30-odd years ago, got rejected, lost hope, and then I saw a course at Falmouth University, which is the university's been established in the last couple of decades in Cornwall. And I decided to enroll on their sort of creative writing program. It's professional writing, they call it, a master's program, and dragged the wife along with me for a year. And that's the sort of how the book came to be.
Oh, is that her first time in Cornwall?
She'd been down a couple of times before, but it's the first time living down there. We lived down there for 12 months or so. She loved it. She's actually an English teacher. Her English is probably better than mine, although she's like most Swiss, can speak multiple languages and stuff. No, she actually fell totally in love with it's a very relaxed way of life. People are not rushing around. People are not all dressed up and uptight. It is a very relaxed way of life. And that's in contrast to, say London or, any city really, Zurich as well.
Yeah, I have to say it is one of my favourite places in the UK, Devon and Cornwall. They're both beautiful. Were you tempted to stay? Were you both tempted to stay there, or did you want to get back to Switzerland?
No, definitely. Very, very tempted indeed. You'll have to read the book to see what happens at the end. Obviously, the book is about, our experience during the year, and then, about where Cornwall is now 30 years after I've left, and then looking at it historically and geographically and the climate. It's damp and cold. No surprises. No surprises there. Obviously, very different from what your listeners are probably used to in Spain. No, we really did think about staying down there, but our children are grown up now, and they're sort of like Anglo-Swiss. They speak English fluently. They have British passports and stuff. But I've settled in Zurich, and in the meantime, I've just become a grandfather, literally in the last couple of days since we've come back. We thought, this is where the family is. But Cornwall is just such a lovely part of the world. It is 1,000,000 miles from anywhere. You've probably known that if you try to drive down from one of the London airports, or in the summer there are direct flights into Newquay from various European capitals. Maybe when we retire, maybe go down and live by the sea. That would be a nice way to spend my retirement years, I think.
Yeah, idyllic. So had it changed an awful lot when you went back? What was the first thing you noticed that had changed?
Well, the most surprising thing is literally we sort of drove in. We'd got lost on the way down. We drove, if anybody's been across Cornwall and Dartmoor and, blowing a gale, we were in some small car. Suddenly the sun comes out. This is the way Cornwall is. 1 minute it's tipping down the rain. The next minute sun is out. And we sort of like rounded a bend, came into Falmouth on one of the beaches. And it was, September, mid-September. It's probably about 4 or 5 degrees in the morning. And there were people in the sea, and the people were on the beach doing Tai Chi, and people were in the sea, either swimming without wetsuits or, surfing with wetsuits. And I was thinking, this would never happen when I was a child in Cornwall. The beach would be pretty much empty, after the summer, particularly when it's chilly. And then, you can see that there is more wealth down in Cornwall. I think part of it was COVID. People could start to work from anywhere. So I think people were literally probably working from Cornwall, even if, their job originally was in London or further up, in the UK. And you see, big cars driving around, brand new cars. I never used to see much of that when I was a kid. Unemployment is very low. And you can see the housing market is absolutely crazy, in terms of, the properties probably just as expensive as a, south of Spain or a south of France, resort. So the wealth is certainly there, upmarket, restaurants, that sort of stuff. But then again, you don't have to travel too far inland into Cornwall itself and away from the coast to see, it is still a pretty difficult life down in Cornwall for many, many people. Unemployment's low, but a lot of the jobs are pretty poorly paying in tourism, for example. There is still, homelessness and a drugs problem in some of the inner towns, which, obviously you don't see a lot of when you're visiting, Falmouth or St. Ives or, some of these other places. But certainly I got the impression there is a greater sense of nationalism. There are a lot of Cornish flags down there. Again, when I was growing up as a kid, you never saw the black and white cross, which is the St. Piran's flag. A lot of interest in maybe having greater autonomy from the rest of the UK. Again, maybe more pride in being Cornish. Maybe that wasn't necessarily there when I was growing up.
Yeah. And what about the history? Because it was a big mining place. It used to be, didn't it?
Yeah, and actually the mines have been there, for forever and ever. And there even speculation potentially that, part of the Roman invasion of the UK, or what it was then, Celtic Britain, was really on the back of trying to get hold of some of the mineral resources, the copper, and the tin, of course, during the Bronze Age. Cornish were probably trading into places like Spain and the rest of the Mediterranean, well before Christ, as it were. It became a very, very big industry, as 17th, 18th century, when, parts of Cornwall were the richest in the UK. On the other hand, of course, a lot of that has now disappeared. To come back to the, parts of it are being quite poor. There still is that sort of hangover, almost a century or so in some cases. Towns where the mines have closed and all the associated businesses with that haven't really found an industry to replace it. So, there's a lot of history there. And then if you dig more into, which I did in the book, was really about, the idea of Cornish independence, and about the sort of the Anglo-Saxons came across, sort of 4th, 5th century, and how, they pushed into the rest of the country, pushing the Celts, up into Scotland and into Wales and down into Cornwall. The sort of Cornwall was never actually invaded, and was sort of quasi-independent until, around, the year 1000 or so. They had the Cornish language and these sort of things as well. And there is an argument to be said that, Cornwall could have been, more like a Wales or a Scotland, and a sort of like independent entity within the British, the United Kingdom. It's very interesting you sort of understand why the Cornish, and I'd probably include myself, amongst them, we tend to have, two chips, a chip on each shoulder, compared to, the rest of the UK.
Very good. And do you know where the name comes from? Was it a wall full of corn? Or is it Latin?
No, I think, it's really, it comes from a long time back. I think the Tamar is a sort of the main border. I don't think there was any corn as such, but it comes from sort of ancient Celtic. And actually, the area of Cornwall was very closely connected to Breton in the north of France. They had close ties, up, well into, as I say, the first few hundred years post Christ. And actually, the wording could come from one of the sort of tribes, the Cornwallians or something like that, which were part of northern Breton as well as and France and Cornwall.
Well, I have one question to finish off with for you, John. Scones, jam first or cream first?
Actually, what I do is I use salty butter as the base. This is absolutely crucial. And then you put the jam on, so you get that nice sweet and salty. And then you put a big dollop of cream on. That is the only way to eat a scone.
Wonderful.
And it's not a scone. Yeah.
No, it's not a scone. It's a scone. It's got an E on the end.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wonderful. That would have been my answer too. Well, we are selling your book on our website. For our listeners, it's called The Cornwall Sabbatical, Observations Through a Returning Pirate's Kaleidoscope, and it's by John Cox. You need to put in Jonathan Cox to find the book. John, if people want to find out more about you, do you have any social media or a website or anything?
Yes, I do. And it's oceancox.com. So OCEAN, as in the sea, cox.com. And then you get a lot more about me. And some of the interviews I've sort of done with the press. And I'll put this interview up there as well. So people can listen to it there.
Thank you very much. It's been lovely to chat to you. Thank you, John.
Yeah. Thanks for the interest, Selina. Thank you.
Bye-bye.